we expect that. Okay.
So the Local Nose is actually a wine marketing platform. It's a wine marketing platform.
So do you like me to acknowledge as a wine marketing platform?
Well, that's what it is. It's a wine marketing, wine recommendation platform.
Okay. Not a wine review organization. So.
Well, no, it's a wine recommendation
Okay.
portal.
Okay. So it's a wine marketing platform for online.
Online wine marketing platform. Yes.
Online is an online wine marketing platform. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Take two.
Okay.
Well, I've done 25 takes on a few occasions. 25 takes is not a joke.
We don't want to do that. Let's get to it.
Yeah, that's right.
Right away.
Hi, welcome to the National Critics' Choice Online News. I'm Robin Stienberg, and welcome to my show again. Here in Singapore, we have a renowned organization known as the Local Nose, and they are actually the online wine marketing platform that's been established by none other than Miss Sarah Mayo, who is here right now with me. She's the founder and the managing director. And we're going to find out more about the Local Nose, about their strategies and their future plans of what is to come. Ms. Sarah, thank you for joining me here at the National Critics' Choice.
Thank you.
And many have adored your organization as one of the most respected organizations that has done the wine reviews and so forth, and even events. Could you tell us more about how the Local Nose itself, the name, came about and how it was established? Because it is a mystery.
Well, in wine world, you nose a wine. So when you're assessing a wine, you actually use your nose and you swirl the wine around, and then you basically assess the wine on the aromatic values and qualities. So the nose part of that particular name my name is really related to wine. The Local Nose, though, really came about because the whole concept behind my business is that wine tastes differently in every different place. It tastes differently based on what your backgrounds are, what the weather's like, what the foods you're eating. I mean, it expresses itself differently in different locations. And that's in part because, obviously, for example, a really light, crisp white wine is perfect in Singapore because it's very refreshing, and you still slightly chilled, and it goes really nicely with like a Riesling with local food, a little bit spicy. Whereas a really heavy, big red wine often doesn't go as well because it's a little bit too alcoholic. When it's not chilled, it's a little bit heavy, and in this heat, in this climate, it might not work. Also, people taste different things, and they have their appreciation of wine based on their background. So when I write a tasting note, I might say it smells like lemons and lemon peel and passion fruit. And you might say, okay, I know what passion fruit is, but it's not lemon peel to me, it's star fruit. That's what it smells like. Because you're from Singapore and you grew up in a tropical place, you have different sets of smells and aromas and flavors that you grew up with knowing more different ones than I do, who grew up in the United States. So the expression of wine and the appreciation of wine is really one individual, but also a very local thing. So my business idea from the beginning was to create a local set of panels, a local set of noses, people who understood and tasted new wines that had those shared backgrounds and that could express those terms and those ideas and gain the respect of people living in a local place. So as a Singaporean, rather than looking across the ocean to England or to the United States for your advice, you could look right here to the people that are living and drinking in the same place that you are. Within that same idea of local, you can also read lots of wine recommendations from the United States or from the UK, but the wine might not be available here. You might say, gosh, I'd really like to have that wine, but nobody imports it. So the other part of the Local Nose is to bring in local importers, have them put their wines in my database, have them submit wines to my local panel, and so that people know, one, what's in the market, and then what's in the market, how does it taste? And then based on how it tastes, whether it's good quality and good value. So that was my concept, to create this very local, specific idea. Hence, that's how I came up with the name, The Local Nose, because I wanted to be the local nose.
So, being the local nose right here in Southeast Asia, what's the kind of challenges that you have faced over the years when you first established this organization, and how did you overcome those odds when you first set up?
Well, I mean, there are challenges specific to my industry, but then there's general challenges that anybody who's starting a business anywhere is going to face. So there's kind of lots of different challenges, particularly with a small startup. One of the first things I had to get past here was I had to establish enough credibility with the local importers and the local market that they would listen to what I had to say. I mean, you can't just walk into a market and go, oh yeah, I know a lot about wine and you should buy this wine. Because you would say, well, who are you? I don't know you, I don't have any idea. So the first hurdle I had to face was to be able to be accepted and to be considered, worthwhile or a good partner. In my case, I took the very, very kind of build it from the ground up approach. So I identified the importers in town, and I made cold call appointments, and I went to meet with them, and I explained my model, and I showed them what I wanted to do. But at the same time, I was able to go to these importers with a panel of respected local people. So when I went, I said, oh, I have this panel of experts that are going to taste with me every single month, and we're going to taste wines blind, and we're going to rate them, and we're going to help you sell them, because you can then have a sticker that says recommended by the local nose, or you can put it it'll be on my website. And so when I went to these people, I brought with me credibility by way of my panel. And I brought in, a lot of the respected people, Edwin Soon, who's a long-time, he's an enologist, Suzanne Brocklehurst, Lisa Perotti Brown, who writes for the Wine Advocate, Chiwi Lee, who's been in the wine business for a very long time, and also Timothy Go, who's very up-and-coming sommelier with the Les Amis group. So in other words, I had a really good, solid panel with me. And when I went to the importers, I said, I'm going to have them taste the wines. Come on, get on board. And because I had this little bit of credibility, they gave me a chance. And then from that point, it was, developing the model and proving to them that, yeah, I'm going to help you, give you a tool that helps you sell your wines. That's what the local nose is trying to do. I'm trying to give people credible information so that they go, actionable information, so that they say, oh, this particular wine's been recommended by these people, and so, gosh, it must be good. And they'll go to, say, Crystal Wines. That's where I tell them. So I'm a referral in that sense.
So, now what kind of business model would that help the local nose to be more profitable? Because I know that this is a wine marketing platform. So, when it comes to ensuring that the local nose itself is sustainable, how does it go about doing this on a very long term?
Well, the idea behind the business model is there's basically 4 different revenue streams, or 4 different and somewhat flexible in how they, how each one, which revenue can generate. So the core revenue, or the base revenue that covers kind of the operation and running of it, is this partnership with importers. So what I do is I ask importers if they would like to participate in my platform. I ask them to pay an annual fee. And they pay an annual fee, and for that, they can submit wines to me, those that get recommended, because I don't guarantee them. This is a very interesting thing, because you're saying, okay, give me your wines, but I'm not going to promise that they'll be recommended, because my panel has to do it in a blind tasting, and I don't know what they'll do. But I tell them basically, go to, you can bring your wines, you're going to put your wines in my database so people can search them. I'll give you advertisement on the website. I will, in all of my events, if your wine gets recommended, I'll take it out and I'll pour it, and I'll tell people about why it's good and let them taste it. Because this is a big function in selling wine. People do these tastings, and you go to events and try the wines. And so somebody has to do that. So in that case, I've become a de facto and an outsourced marketing person, okay? But that knows their wine, has a credible, recommendation to pass on to consumers. So the idea is, basically, I go to the importer and I support them in their marketing efforts. In most cases, importers don't have individual marketing arms, okay, because they're too small and they themselves can't afford to have a lot of marketing. So what I offer them is a really affordable marketing, outsourced marketing service. And that's one. So basically getting suppliers to do that. The second way that I make money is obviously through events. So I do big events, and these same wines, I'll bring them out, and then I'll sell the wines at the event, or organize a big tasting of Pinot Noir, and I'll invite people in, and they can try Pinot Noirs from all of my importers and recommended wines. And so then I would make money from the receipts of the event, but also from the sale of the wine on the back end of it. And I would function as a reseller in that case. I would, buy the wines and I would mark it up a percentage. And I have a really low markup just because I'm trying to help my stakeholders sell wine, so I don't take as much of a profit as most resellers would, brick and mortar resellers. And so events is the other way. The third way is advertising, just flat out, going out there and selling advertising to the Hilton or the Hyatt or whoever it is, and it's just to help them promote their wine program, and also just because it's a lifestyle product wine, and so just flat out advertising. And then the fourth way is education, and so I run education courses that would be they're consumer driven. There's a lot of education classes that are really aimed for trade professionals, and things that I've already studied and done, the Wine and Spirit Education Trust, for example. But there's not really a lot for consumers to just come in and understand how wine's made. And people are very curious. They want to understand why is this Pinot Noir different from this Cabernet Sauvignon? What makes them different? They're both red. What's the difference? And so, because of my expertise and training, I can, and also my ability to convey this information, I can help them.
Oh, amazing. Now, how important is customer service is today, by definition, among the industry players?
Well, it's huge, and it's a really good question. In part because there's in wine. I would think there's two ways you can look at customer service. One is that when you walk into a shop or you walk into some place and you run into a wine professional or somebody that can help you make the selection. Okay, so that's really important. I mean, because consumers, you walk into a wine shop and you're faced with a whole wall of wine, and unless you have an idea what you want or what you like, or where you like Australian wine or you like Chilean wine, whatever, you're pretty lost, generally speaking. So you rely on, at a retail point of sale, you rely on a shopkeeper or somebody that can help you guide through and find what you want. So that's one bit of customer service. From an online perspective, it comes down to order delivery and making sure that you get what you want, making sure that the wines are stored properly. You went down to my cellar earlier. It's, a lot of people in Singapore a lot of importers don't store their wines properly. That's poor customer service, because wine's an agricultural product. It can spoil. You need to make sure that it's being kept in proper conditions so that the end consumer, by the time you get it, I haven't, in the process of holding it in stock, I haven't ruined the wine, but I'm selling it to you anyway because I've got to deplete my stock, And there's a lot of that goes on in Singapore. Honestly, there's a lot of really bad wine, very bad, poorly stored wine. So those would be aspects of customer service. And just to tell you how I think most people do, in Singapore, I think you're going to have very, very few places that when you walk in, they can actually help you understand anything about the wine. In most cases, they'll sell to you based on price point. They won't sell to you based on they won't ask you, well, what are you looking for? What do you like? What do you like about wine? And then help you find something that based on what you say. Like a doctor would diagnose an illness. It's like, well, I'm going to diagnose what you might like. So very few people do that. There's only a couple of shops that I think have good staff able to do that. And as far as the other things, it varied. There's some people that are really, really good at delivery, very quick, and that are conscious about their wine storage. But then there's a fair number who get the delivery right, but they're not storing their wines right.
Would you like to believe, even for myself, that as the country and economies here in Southeast Asia these emerging economies, are they going to be able to catch up and establish a good customer service programs? Do you foresee that? And will the local nodes be encouraging such programs like, having a great customer service education as well as along the wine education?
Well, at the wine education point, yes, definitely I help that out. But I'm really more on the consumer side of the fence. So it's really training of trade professionals that's more important to that. So the local nose is helping consumers maybe identify whether it's good customer service or not, but we're not training, I'm not in that business. That said, people on my panel, I have one of the noses, Hui Peng Lim, is one of Singapore's most he's Singapore's top educator, and I get a lot of requests and I refer them to him. And I keep articles up and I write about wine education. So I suppose I elicit interest from trade and then I send them on to Hui Peng. So in that case, yes, I do serve as a channel for that, but I myself am not involved in training customers and doing customer service training. There are a few importers that I work with that have asked me to train sales staff, and I have on occasion done across a single wine or a single type of wine, but systematically I don't do that. No.
In the business of the online wine marketing platforms like yours, the local notes itself, what kind of trends do you see in terms of customers who have the habit to buy wines over online and offline? Do you foresee that Asians are going to catch up with the idea of buying more product on online than offline?
Well, wine's particular in that it's not like buying a piece of clothing or some shoes or something like that, because one, if you buy just one or two bottles, from the merchant side of things, you've not spent enough money to justify $15 or $20 of delivery charge. They're going to charge you to deliver those one or two bottles. So economically, you're better off going to the shop to pick up if you just want two bottles. Now the flip side of it is, if you're able to buy or you want to buy by the case, which would get free delivery, you have to have a place to keep it and you have to have a place to store it. And a lot of Asians don't have wine storage. They don't even have places, live in big enough places that they would store a case or two of wine, because they just don't have the place for it. So there's a lot of reasons why online sales are not as robust here as they would be, say, in the United States. You get where people, in the States where I buy wine, you buy by the case. You buy 12 bottles, it gets delivered, but you have a closet, or you've got plenty of space to keep it. And also it's not tropical necessarily, so you don't have to keep it in controlled storage for it not to spoil, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's some of the obstacles for people to use an online platform. That said, online sales are growing. Another reason why they're not that popular yet is because most online sales also, like my site uses PayPal. So PayPal charges me 3% on all transactions. And as a merchant, I either have to absorb that for the consumer or I pass it on to the consumer. And I don't have very high margins anyway, so I'm not going to absorb the 3%. So passing it on to the consumer, that's also in Asia, people don't like to do that. Again, in America, the convenience for me to be able to go online, have a 12 box of wine that's really heavy, and I really don't want to carry it, and have somebody pick it up and deliver it to my doorstep, and I'm paying 3%, that seems like a very small price to pay for that convenience for me. But that's, again, a different cultural way of thinking, I think, than it is in Asia, or certainly than it is in Singapore.
Now, speaking about Singapore and the future plans and challenges ahead, what advice would you apply for aspiring entrepreneurs, especially women, who are entering into the business? Because there's not very many women who are in the wine business that I see, although it is actually a very good business.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, it's just all about tasting wines and recommending wines and and have it, distributed, the way you have done. Um, what would be your advice for aspiring, women or entrepreneurs who wish to enter into this?
The wine industry in
the wine
particular?
industry, yes, wine industry.
Well, I think, your point about there not being a lot of women. There aren't a lot of women in certain parts of the business, but there are a lot of women in other parts. And, I think that women are, you find women winemakers and sommeliers and writers and, marketers and event promoters and event marketing people. Often on the sales side and on the, that's pretty limited to men or more limited, and you don't have as many women in the sales side. But regardless of what anybody wanted to do in the wine industry, the very first place to start would be education. To actually, whether you're selling it, writing it, marketing it, whatever you're doing, you have to know the product. You have to actually understand the product. And so as a departure point, I think anybody, male or female, getting into the business should understand what the product is and how it's made and where it comes from and what makes wines from different places different. Why are they more expensive? Why is a Burgundy Pinot Noir more expensive than a New Zealand Pinot Noir? Well, there are some very good reasons. Commercial and climatic, and a lot of reasons why there's a big price difference. It's the same thing as, why is a Louis Vuitton handbag more expensive than a, one from Far East Plaza? Well, there's some qualitative differences, and what goes into the craftsmanship and everything else. So I think the very first step would be to do that. As far as for women in particular, I think it's important to, because it is, all businesses are male dominated. Men are usually the ones, except for maybe hairdressers. Maybe there are more women hairdressers, and I think teachers, generally you have more women teachers. But, generally speaking, men dominate most every other industry. And that shouldn't be a deterrent for a woman. And I think the way to go about it is the way you go about any job. You have to be persistent. You have to, hold your own, be confident, be willing to take risks, be willing to, to make mistakes, because that's what happens to everybody. And I think women, you can't just be shy, You have to be willing to assert yourself and find ways to, to advance your business goals. It doesn't matter what it is you're selling, or doing. That's good advice.
Now, when you first started the local nose, have you ever measured or calculated any form of failure? Were you prepared to lose everything?
Yeah, I still am. What are you kidding me? I still am. It's not like you ever. When you own your own business, lots of very big companies go out of business. Look at the banking crisis. It happens. So small businesses are all the same. In fact, they're more vulnerable, probably.
Would you encourage women to be aware that they should expect failure as well as a learning platform?
Yes. The thing that, and it's a hard lesson to learn. It's a hard thing to contemplate. But when you go into any startup, you have to be prepared to lose every single bit of money that you put into it, and every single bit of, effort. It has to, even if you don't get very far, you have to be willing to do that. And the reason is, and I don't know what the percentages are, but a large number of startups fail. A huge number. It's very few. The big success stories, they're big and well known because there aren't many of them. The Michael Dells, the Steve Jobs and Apple and all of these, these are really exceptional stories, and there were exceptional ideas, and they were executed well, and they got there. Lots of businesses don't fail because of the person either, or because of the idea. There's an argument that businesses can fail because it's a great idea, but it's the wrong time. My very first internet startup that I did 12 years ago, 1980, 14 years ago, was right at the height of the dot-com bubble in the United States. And I put together, my children were small at the time, and I put together a business called ideamoms.com. And Idea Moms, I had great branding, I had great content, I had a really good idea around trying to produce for sale products that mothers had designed. And mothers designed and invented, and the idea behind that being mothers design and invent things that are practical and they solve problems. They help children, they help their daily lives. And so the first product I came out with was this really interesting little thing. I had three children, and when they would get sick, keeping track of the medicine. Did they get the medicine, did they not? Mothers get harried and busy and moving around, and oh, did I give the medicine or not? And it was just this very simple little refrigerator magnet grid that was called a medicine minder, a med minder. And it was great. You had a little pen, you could keep track of keep track if your kid was having a rash or whatever. It's just a little diary that was, while you're in the kitchen doing stuff, you could just make notes. Now, it sounds like a very silly, simple thing, but there wasn't one on the market, and I found really good use, and I found a bunch of women that found it useful too. And they would pay $5 for it. It's not going to cost you a lot of money either. So there was another one that was a toilet training, tool for mothers. But the point was, I started that business fully prepared to make sure that it was going to be the most successful. Believe me, I thought it was going to be the most successful thing ever. And then the dot-com bubble busted, and so nobody was investing anything. And I had a limited amount of money that I could put into it myself. And so you kind of go, well, I can't really do anything more with this right now. I'm going to have to hold on. Circumstances led, we had to move, and so I let the site go down. 2 years later, or 3 years later, I read a story about a woman in California who had started the exact same business, and it was very profitable, and she was doing really, really well. And it was, now where did she learn about it? Maybe she had seen my business on the internet and ultimately copied it, or I don't know. But my business was just the wrong time. It had nothing to do with the idea or my willingness to work really hard or anything else. Same thing could be for the local nose. I'm heading uphill. There's a big current of efforts around events and wine dinners and marketing, and it's very competitive, the wine market. And it may turn out to, my idea is to do a local nose in Singapore, next to China, and Hong Kong. I want to have and I want them each to be independent. I want it to scale that way. That's a really ambitious idea, and nobody else is doing it. But it may not work right now, but I bet you eventually it will, even if I'm not the one that does it. But so you just have to, and I can't get up and go to work every day and think, wow, if I fail, my life's over, because it's not. At the end of the day, it's a business, and it is money, and you want it to be successful, and you invest your life and heart and soul in it. But at the end of the day, it's a business, and it's not your life. It's not. So.
Speaking about not your life in terms of business, what is the keys to your success in making the local nose to what it is today? What was the secret of your success?
I don't know that there's any secret at all. To date, I think that if you asked anybody in the market, the one thing that's held me in good stead is I'm persistent, and I stay with stuff, and if I say I'm going to deliver on something, I do. So I think now there's a lot of stuff that I don't end up doing because I don't want to. I actually don't say I'll deliver. I go, no, I don't want to do that. But if I'm on board and I take on a project, I'm gonna work really my hardest to make sure I deliver it and deliver a good job. So, if I were a pharmaceutical salesman, I'd do the same thing. Or if I were trying to start a shoe company, it just wouldn't matter. That's just my nature, my character. So, that said, I think it's a combination of that hard work. I think it's also a combination of I personally am a really creative person and constantly think, it's this serial entrepreneur thing, constantly thinking of new ideas and, well, hang on, maybe if you did it this way, or what wouldn't it be fun to do an event like this with this type of wines and this type of theme. I get a lot of energy from that. I really enjoy that. And I think for a lot of people in the market in wine, it becomes very difficult to think up ideas and to get excited about that. And I kind of naturally do. So I think that some of that rubs off on people and it builds good feeling. And so that would be one of the things that's made the local nose successful, is people associate positive things with it.
Does good talent matter to you? I mean, hiring good talent into your organization.
Oh my gosh, that's like, that's absolutely the most important thing. I mean, and I'll tell you, it's not easy to do in Singapore. It's really not. It's not. And part of that would be, maybe if I were in America and I were in my hometown and I knew people and I had connections and, and I understood where to go to get the right people, it would be easier. But here, because I'm a foreigner, I'm not a PR. I'm not going to stay in Singapore forever. I mean, I'm a traditional expat on a work visa, a dependent work visa, and that's what I do. So, but I don't have, as hard as I've tried to get networked into the right kinds of groups, it's challenging. It's really, really hard to find. And so, yeah, it's very difficult. And it's so important because you can't do anything unless you have dependable people. You really can't.
And if someone were to start all over again, like yourself, who would be the first 3 kinds of people that you will hire?
Well, I'll tell you, the first people I would hire is people that I could say, do you want a stake in this business and let me give you some equity and you build it and you help own it, okay? Because one of the things that, it's just like anything. I mean, if you have a stake and you feel like you're going to own it and you feel like you have a hand in the destiny of a business, I think it's meaningful. It makes you stay up a little later. It makes you make sure that editing's done a little bit better. It makes you be a little nicer to a customer. It makes you, if you're feeling a little bit sick, instead of calling in sick, you come in and you just, or you work from home or something like that. And you find that would be one of the big qualities. You give people a stake in what they're doing, because it just makes a big difference. Startups often do that, and there's a reason for it, because you're trying to do a lot for very little. I mean, it's obviously you don't have big money to throw at staffing or salaries. The other thing I would make sure of is that from the beginning, you're not, I mean, my own experience, you're not hiring somebody to temporarily alleviate one problem. You're hiring somebody who's going to maybe start out that way, but even though when you're hiring, you're saying to them, okay, here's what you're going to start out with for the first 6 weeks. And then we're going to get to this, but then this is your job, this is the job you're going into. So these are the things that you're tracking into. In a startup, you have to do so many different things. I mean, you have to shift wines in my case, you have to write tasting notes, you have to, make sure that you're calling everybody, you're talking to customers, you're talking to suppliers, you're talking to restaurants, you're talking to, where can I get these invitations made, what are they going to cost, what's the print? I mean, you've got printers, you've got all these different people, and all small businesses do that are in this type of services work. But in my case, the person has to be willing to do everything. Has to be willing to try or to fill in the blank, but at the same time, know that they've got a core job that they have to get done too. So there may be stuff outside, and then from their core job that they have to stretch themselves to do. I think this is important. And then the third thing, I don't know. The third thing, off the top of my head, I mean, if you have, obviously you want people that are pleasant to be around, and but no, but seriously, and that the wine business can be fun. I mean, for goodness sakes, it's built around a product that's convivial and everything else. So it's nice if you have a rapport with your employees. Yeah.
How did you manage your family life versus your work life? Because it is a challenge for a mother like yourself, and